I am Dr. Elias Sampa from the Philippines, and I'm a member of the Info OBE, which is a group of individuals, professors, scholars, and enthusiasts about human learning that has come together to really promote the transformation of education, where we begin to talk about empowering humanity and unleashing the human potential in every human being. The school system has been created indeed to be a system of transforming humanity. Yes, every human being is born with a lot of capabilities, but these capabilities are actually in infant state. We need to facilitate the transformation. The educational models that we have embraced for so many years have tended to be systems that follow the assembly line, if I may speak that way. They are designed to select people who are considered to be much more talented than others. So it's a selection process. And once we select process, education becomes a system of distributing power, authority, opportunities in life. And we always think that opportunities are limited. And so we have to select the best among the best to take those opportunities. And I think that that approach to education has made it impossible for many people to succeed in education, to succeed in learning. And our basic principles in outcome-based education, the premises, for example, number one, that says that all students can learn and succeed, but not on the same day and not in the same way. Then we have also success breeds success, and we have schools control conditions of success. So when we talk about schools controlling conditions of success, we mean that the educational models that we embrace make it sometimes too tight in such a way that only a few select individuals can go through the structure we have created. And therefore, the expectations of education that we need to have, that it's an educational institution, it's an educational system, it ends up not functioning that way, because what we do is to commit ourselves to selecting so that few people can be given opportunities and a great majority are left without access to those opportunities. That has made it appear that some people are really very good, others are not. And it has made education, rather than functioning like a transformative process, it has functioned so much as a gatekeeper to human possibilities. So if we can rethink and say that education has to become a system that ensures that every single child born to humanity can be both a consumer and a producer. Just like our traditional societies, in every traditional community you go to, agricultural community, farming community, the fishing community, artisans, they really ensure that every child born in their community will actually acquire the skills and qualities that the community possess. And as much as possible, even go beyond what is familiar to the existing community. So it is possible. But in the school system, that's not the way we think about it. We have tended to think about it really as a selection process. So when the premise of OBE tells us that schools control conditions of success, it's not just the schools, it's individual teachers, it's individual professors, it's individual lecturers. They decide who goes through and who does not. Because the way we structure learning, the way we structure the designing of curriculum, the designing of instruction, it tends to favor some people and disadvantage some people. Especially when we talk about national systems, when we have centralized systems of education commanded from the capital cities and then implemented everywhere in a uniform way. It becomes very difficult to really make education work for the people. everybody become much more committed to want to become like the people in the capital cities where decisions are made, where the gatekeepers live and work. As a result, we end up incapacitating the population groups that we have. When as a matter of fact, if we committed to ensure that every person get to the highest level they can go in life, then we can increase our economic capabilities, our social capabilities, our political capabilities. One man or woman goes away, another person can step in, equally competent. We are not going to have a monopoly of a few people controlling systems, whether it's a medical, engineering, any other system, but we can actually democratize human opportunities. And so our theme about aspects of decentralizing and distributed learning really speaks to that theme of, is there a way that education can be designed in a highly thematic, but at the same time, very decentralized, so that the people living in a particular community may absorb the structure, maybe the standards, maybe the outcome, general outcomes that are expected for every course and every learning experience that students will have. But at the same time, let it acquire the local adaptation, so that the children in every community and adults, professionals, they will be able to relate to their everyday life, have meaning, and move in a way that is empowering. An empowered individual is an empowered community. An empowered community is an empowered nation. An empowered nation is an empowered humanity. An empowered humanity is an empowered planet. An empowered planet is an empowered ecosystem. The entire cosmic system needs to be empowered by simply allowing its capabilities, let the universe unleash its own potential, which we find in every human being when we consolidate, when we harness every opportunity, every ability, every seed that exists in every child, in every person. We will be better off as communities. We'll be better off as a global community. We'll be better off as nations, as communities, as cities, as neighborhoods. And education in that sense takes up a very enormous responsibility. And I do think that the way that we have approached education in recent years, in the last 100 years or so, hasn't done that quite well. And that's the reason why we find so much goodwill in universities and schools. It's not always translated into the results we are looking for, of having empowered communities, enabling communities, just and fair societies. We are struggling all of that. Then outcome-based education also gives us the comparing purposes. You know, when you talk about why do we really feel it's very important to approach education in a transformative way, really transformative way. Outcome-based education gives us two compelling purposes. If we have to send a single child to school, if we have to put an individual in an educational program, what is really our mission? Here, recognizing that education institutions, organizations, programs, they control conditions of success. Then our compelling purpose become the maximization and expansion of conditions of success that enable all students to success. We can do it. Then the second one is sending all learners into the world at graduation, fully equipped and empowered to succeed. And so if that become an education, then our planning systems, of course, is going to have certain elements that may be characterized by common future aspirations of a nation, but then at the same time translated into local aspirations. And when we bring those aspirations in every center and location of our communities, then education has to have that character. It has to acquire that character, where there is a decentralization, not by way of replicating the same structures of the capital cities, and we replicate that everywhere. Decentralization in the real sense here, decentralizing in the sense we mean acquiring natural, the local context, the aspirations and dreams of peoples, the desire to transform our communities, our families, to have security, peace and order. When we translate that into a curriculum, into education, of course, we are going to see a wide range of varieties of learning packages and experiences that can be really have credentials that really translate into looking at people as competent, regardless of which part of the country they're coming from or the location. But it is responsive to our aspiration for growth, for transformation, for goodness, for success, for economic needs and social needs. Then, of course, distributed learning requires really that we do not have everything in one box. That learning means everybody read the same textbook, that everybody will have to do the same task or assignment. Everybody has to be assessed in the same way. It doesn't matter how nice you may be, how good you may be as a designer, there will always be some people cut out. There will always be some people left out. Unless we diversify, unless we design in a way that there's so much of choice, so much of differentiation in everything we design towards managing and making education work for us. And that is really a possibility. I have had the opportunity to work with so many educators in many countries that have been, and I see a lot of energy in many of these educators who want to make a difference. But very often the issue is, wait a minute, but will this be accepted by the central government? Okay, does the central system become so flexible enough to allow this to happen? What about credentialing of our students? Well, let's have a structure framework. I think that what we now have as qualification frameworks are well written. If we can just translate that into repackaging those principles that are laid out in many of the qualification frameworks, which purely articulate the kind of outcomes in terms of abilities you are looking for in a professional person who goes through the training or the educational process and come out. What our social expectations, political expectations, economic expectations, spiritual expectations, thinking about what we really want to happen to every individual who goes through learning in this context. So I'm sure that in every country, when you look at outcome-based articulation for qualification frameworks, you're going to see that there is really a lot of engines of change are taking place there. But I'm sure to succeed, we need to let go of the past. We really need to say, take a position and say, let's stop much of what you have been doing. Let's allow opportunities to unfold. Let's allow ourselves to allow new ways of looking at education to take place. Anyway, whether we do it or not, there is a lot of change that is happening outside of the educational system. As part of work that I do as a professor, teaching research, I've seen, for example, that much of the fantastic and transformative research that is happening in the world is no longer coming from universities. It's coming from people outside of the universities. Why is it like that? Well, because we have tended to close opportunities we have tended to become too much rigid with so many things that even creativity, which is supposed to be natural to human beings, is not allowed. There are so many rules and policies we put in that are very restricting. So part of creating a successful story for learning and for education is really to embrace the decentralizing and distributed learning. And this will make it possible for every child and every human being learning in the country, doesn't matter what part of the country they're in, what their economic standing can be. We'll be able to ensure that everybody gets to be where we aspire them to be. And that will make our society far much better. And I think that the greatest responsibility still remains with education and with what we do moving forward. So I look at outcome-based education framework. If it's really done right, this is possible. This is possible. Even within standard classrooms in the urban centers, in the capital cities, they don't need to have a uniform thing that they do for every student. I think they need to create opportunities for decentralizing, opportunities for distributed learning, even within the schools, even within the colleges. What may work with one student may not work with the other. There should be also opportunities to open up what else is new that we can venture into without being bothered with too much centralization, too much complex decision-making system to navigate across education. I think we have a lot of opportunities that can come around and make us really make education work for us. Yeah, so those are my remarks on this. And thank you so much for participating in this session for listening. Okay, do we have any questions or clarification coming from anybody? Hello? Okay, so what we have done in this entire conference really is to open up a lot of possible ways of looking at how outcome-based education can really become something that can allow the decentralizing and distributed learning in all of our communities, small cities, primary schools, preschools, middle schools, secondary school and senior high school programs, collegiate and university. We can actually do a lot. So looking forward, we really intend to move on and encourage people from all over the world to really come together and solidify our aspirations in concrete programs and concrete designs on the curriculum side, designs on the instructional side, because we really have all that it requires to make education fully outcome-based, and to do so in terms of establishing really the clarity of focus. And clarity of focus comes from that understanding that we have aspirations as a people, wherever we are, economically, politically, religiously, in every aspect of our life. There are aspirations we have. Let's convert that into specific outcomes for every learner, for every member of the community. And then we set high standards. And by setting high standards, it means that we raise those expectations to the highest level possible, so that empowered people coming out of it are going to be people who can really, really live up to the expectations. And of course, if we have high expectations, we should be prepared to support the realization of those expectations through what we call expanded opportunity for learning, as well as support for learning success. This means that we will always have students who struggle. We are always going to have people whose pace of learning may sometimes be quite slow compared to others. But we need to create opportunities where both the fast learner and the slow learner may find success moving forward. And that has to be part of our commitment. You know, there are no students who are completely uneducable. They are completely impossible to educate. But we know that some people may take long to develop certain capabilities. What makes it impossible usually in our traditional education is the time count. When the time is up, then the learners are thrown out. But if we can consider things like time into flexible resource, then some people may be taking 6 months, some people may be taking 1 year to finish the same. And we should create those opportunities without adding expenses, too much expenses. Those possibilities can be created, and that will enable us, we call it expanded opportunity. It will enable us to really measure up to the highest level of success in our graduates, which will also translate into impacts in our communities, impacts in our workplace, impacts in our political systems, impact in our religious communities, spiritual communities, impact in our neighborhoods. Because a well-educated community needs to translate into a well-lived life among people. Here we are not just talking about making millions of money, we are talking about people becoming better humans, better versions of themselves in whatever they do, right? Creative, innovative, and everything else. Then if we have these 3 elements, then we design down. Those are what we call the 4 power principles of outcome-based education. Once we have all those things and try to do them consistently, it's not one thing today and forget about it until next year, but do them consistently, creatively, systematically, and simultaneously. So it's not You can't do expanded opportunity and lower the high expectations. Because if you're going to lower high expectations, then the expansion of opportunity is not really opportunity. You may be probably making people feel good, but not necessarily doing the job that we need to do. So expanded opportunity should not be considered as a corruption in the quality of education. It should actually be considered as a challenge put forward. It's like adding another layer of strength to education. Because if we insist that every person must succeed, and we open up everything possible because we control conditions of success, we are more likely to secure extraordinary success for all our learners. And so designing down means that we are beginning really, we call it front-loaded design. Front-loaded curriculum requires that you think about the end first and you work towards that end. And therefore, if we put all these elements together, we can purely, greatly decentralize and provide distributed learning. So this is something that we are really hoping and looking forward. The governments around the world have done a great job to really embrace outcome-based education, at least in terms of our qualification framework. But there are a lot of challenges that are coming up, really addressing issues of inequality, issues of lack of resources and other things that are needed for education. So what we need to do moving forward is really to ensure that we can support learning at all levels across our nations and the entire landscape of our communities in a decentralized way, in a distributed learning. This is going to make it possible for us to succeed and to make a big change in the education as we move forward. And that's what transformed education will look like. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening and wishing you all the best as we move forward together, hand in hand, to realize a transformed education for our children and for the future generation, including our environment and the entire ecosystem. Thank you very much for coming. God bless you all.